Well, what do we have here? Could it be? Yes, it is a unicorn. G'day and welcome back to Rusty Inspirations. No, it's not mine, unfortunately. The bloke dropped it off here because he had it sharpened at the start of the season and it's not cutting like it was. So he's asked if I could have a look at it. A couple other little things here and there. Now this machine does need a bit of a birthday, but for today, we're just gonna find out what it needs and hopefully get it up and running to get him through to the end of the season. Thought I might add, I've wheeled the toolbox outside today because it is stinking hot, well into the 40s. So I'm thinking it might be a little bit warm in the shed, so we'll hang out on the back veranda. Now I've only so far had a real quick look over this. I'm thinking that the cutting problem might just be a reel to bed knife adjustment. So we'll have a play around with that. Worst case, we'll give it a light back lap. A couple other little things we've found is there is an issue with the tensioner, which I'd recommend he definitely looks at buying a new one of them, especially for the price, pretty cheap. Hopefully we can sort that out for today. This thrust pad is done. Could probably do with a new clutch fork as well. That looks like it's pretty bent, but we might tweak that. I've got a plastic pad here just to get him out of trouble for today. Clutch seems to be working all right, except I don't believe that that is a fiber washer and it is jamming. My first notice of that is, watch this, I might be able to see. It's actually pulling the side over, so that's binding in there. So we're gonna pull that apart and have a look. While we're at it, this clutch has been welded up, which I do not like. I'm still running the gauntlet on my lawnmower with the original clutches. I need to replace them. I'll get some new ones, but I check them regularly and it's always in the back of the mind that something will go wrong and then you end up wrecking a perfectly good motor. So I highly recommend that he looks at getting that replaced over winter. Now, another issue he had is it wasn't driving properly, so it might be a bit hard to see on camera, but I can see that there is bits and pieces of missing clutch cork and that in there, so I had one of them lying around as well. I don't see why we can't get this in working order today. Let's see how we go. We might get some degreaser under here and give this a good clean. All right, that didn't work. It's obviously a little bit too hot out there in the direct sun. So now we're gonna unbolt this motor, see if we can work out what's going on with this thrust pad. All right, so disconnected the throttle, which he said he was having dramas with, and no surprise, the cable is absolutely shot. We've got it all unbolted. Now we're going to remove it from here. See, we've got washers here to space it up, to line it up here. Ideally, we'd oblong these holes and drop that down to make it fit better, but it's doing the job. Definitely seen worse PTO shafts, that's for sure. This clutch still moves in just fine, disengages, but it wasn't letting the clutch fork push it in. So this here is tight on the PTO shaft for whatever reason. See if we can get this out without doing any damage. Of course we won't. It's never that easy, is it? Alright, I was trying to avoid coming in here because it's bloody hot. turns out it is a fibre washer, but man, is it tight on there. It's not letting it do what it needs to do. That thrust pad is so worn out. Like I said, I'll put one of them old plastic ones on there for the time being, and when he gets a bit more work done on it, he can replace it with a brass one, so it's original. Dead. The shaft overall seems pretty good though. Right, so I'm going to wander into town and see if I can source a new Woodruff key. Wish me luck. Alrighty, so Butler's Mechanical in Port Augusta had a Woodruff key, which was pretty good because we needed one ASAP. Alright, so now I've got this second-hand plastic thrust pad to replace this worn-out brass one for the time being. I'm sure he'll replace it with another brass one later. In saying that, there's a little bit of controversy over these and people thinking they're no good. I'll tell you right now, there's nothing wrong with plastic thrust pads if they're set up right. And if you are constantly melting these and you think that you need to get a brass one to fix a problem, that's just not true. Of course, they need to be lubricated regularly, but that solely alone isn't going to stop them from melting. They have to be set up correctly with the right clearances and tolerances. I'll show you that as we go. Plastic thrust pads, no dramas. Been using them for 6 years, never had a problem. I think this might have been off me Yard King, the one that's the groomer now. Paint's a dead giveaway. I would have just replaced it because they're cheap and you've got it apart, you might as well, but there's nothing wrong with it and it's going to come in handy for now anyway. This is a little bit bent, I assume, from being forced into a position that didn't really want to be in, so I'll just get the vice grips on there and the multi grips and straighten them out a little bit. Hole pointing up. Woodruff key. Alright, bolt this motor back up and see if it's working the way it should be. So that's not looking too bad. It's probably a little bit bigger gap in there than we need. Let's crack that off and wind that up a little bit. They say about 1 millimeter when the clutch is engaged. So what you want is when this is turning, that this isn't pre-loaded. That's what's gonna melt this thrust pad. It doesn't matter if you've got a brass, plastic, whatever. If this is wrong, it's wrong. There needs to be clearance in there. I mean, I don't get carried away with measuring it. I just go by sight and feel. But you could have a tiny little bit of gap there, and as everything heats up, it might start to grab and then it will melt. So you need a reasonable amount of clearance. If you're melting thrust pads, it's not because you haven't oiled it, it's because it's incorrectly adjusted. Simple as that. Now the oil in there is just so that can slide up and down that shaft. That doesn't actually turn on there. And that oil just lubricates that thrust pad as it turns. Doesn't need to be a lot, just enough. All right, so another one of the issues he was having is his hand control throttle wasn't working. Now this cable's pretty well shot. He wasn't overly concerned about having one. Now he was just holding his throttle on with this cable tie. So what we'll do, pull that off, put that in a bag, so if he wants to replace it later, get a new cable, he can. But for now, we're just gonna tighten this back up so he can use the engine control again, which in my opinion works fine. I'd like to put a throttle control on mine eventually, but I just haven't rushed around to it. As I said, for now, just using this throttle works a treat. Get rid of that. I believe that might be a 10 millimeter. Look at that, now I'll have throttle control again. Might just pull this off for the time being. We'll send that with him, so if he wants to replace at a later date, he still has the option to do so. Right, so our next issue is this chain tensioner. So we're gonna adjust that up, tighten it into place. That's not actually turning, so we might undo that and see what's going on in there. So I'll definitely be putting that to him to see if he wants to upgrade that in the future. All right, now before we go any further, I suppose we better pull this clutch off and sort out that clutch cork. Right now we can clearly see that there's a lot of cork missing in there. That's all that was left. Oh, it's not going to be too much trouble getting it off, is there? Clean that up and glue the new cork on. All right, so now it's time to glue the cork onto here. I've cleaned this up. I just wanted to add, don't go hitting this with something like a flat disc on an angle grinder or something like that. You want to keep this dead flat. I've just cleaned it up with a Stanley knife, then just ran around it real quickly with the orbital sander. I haven't got carried away with it, just clean it up a bit and etch it up. Probably could have went and done that inside. I don't think the temperature was ideal for that. Nevertheless, we got it done. Paper. Push that in there. Bit of plastic bag works the same. And fall out. Works an absolute treat. Tighten the bottom chain by lifting it up, and that chain by sliding it that way. Try and find that happy medium. And we tighten this one up. Adjusted that up with this bolt here. Right, I'm thinking we might give this a quick kick in the guts and see if everything's working the way it should be. Show you. Well, that is 100 times better than what it was. Bloody stoked. But now, we're gonna get this thing cutting. Alrighty, so I can see straight away that there is a massive gap there. Hopefully that's all that issue is. And I can even see there's quite a significant gap there. So we'll adjust him up and see how it goes. Hopefully we can get away without backlapping it. All the old left-handed thread, so we're going to tighten that up to move that closer to the bed knife. Same over here. I have a feeling we're going to be backlapping this. The other day Dan suggested I cut these in half, so you know what, I'll give it a crack. So got it cutting most of the way along, although it's got contact. I reckon it's picked something up along the way, right here. Can't see anything, but I can feel a pretty serious imperfection there. I'm gonna get the old backlapper out and hopefully we'll clear that up with
a really light back lap, and we'll get it cutting all the way across. We'll have a crack in here. Give them chains a spray while we're at it. Going to wash that off and come back and see if it's cutting properly. Now, I'm not generally the best at keeping my lines straight, but I can tell you right now, I wasn't overly worried about it today because it is hot out here. But that thing is working beautifully. That is a pretty nice cut, all in all. You just hear it bloody whirring along nicely. Peeled off some dust. All right, so we've fixed up the main clutch. Got that all working, fixed up the drive clutch, the tensioner on the chain. That does need more attention later. We've got it cutting nicely. We've got his throttle so we can use it. Yeah, a few other things that are gonna need doing. Oh yeah, we've put this bung in for now, so we'll need to get a new bung for that eventually. They're not expensive for a pack of them plugs. Probably, I dare say, he'll want to put a brass thrust pad on there, back on there eventually. Probably could do with some new height adjuster screws. They're pretty bloody worn and made a little bit difficult to do the adjustment. For the price of them, I don't see why you wouldn't do it, I guess. I think I'd definitely like to see a new clutch on here. Yeah, I don't know. Might last forever, but if it lets go, it's gonna do some damage, you know, so definitely gonna put it to him. I'd recommend replacing that. I think that'd be very good insurance. Yeah, possibly that throttle cable, and he'll need the upgraded chain tensioner because that one is done as far as I'm concerned. But other than that, it's got really good bones. I think that'll get him through to the end of the season, which realistically isn't that far away, but I'm definitely going to put it to him that when he takes it off the road over winter to definitely consider replacing a few of them parts for sure. If he does that, it'll last him a bloody long time. But you know, it's got a good motor, everything else, it's a bloody good machine. So if you like the video, please feel free to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. Cheers, legends.